Silicon Valley, the land of billion-dollar dreams, genius founders, and world-changing innovation. A place where one brilliant idea can turn a college dropout into a tech messiah, and one well-told lie can fool the richest and most powerful people on Earth. Today, we dive into the greatest fraud ever sold in the tech world. A story of ambition, manipulation, deception, and the terrifying price of chasing a dream that never existed. This is the dark truth behind Theranos and its founder, Elizabeth Holmes. Once praised as the next Steve Jobs, now remembered as the mastermind behind Silicon Valley's biggest scam. But this story is deeper than the headlines, darker than the documentaries, more twisted than the courtroom drama. Because behind the fall lies a truth the world rarely talks about. How Silicon Valley, hungry for the next big miracle, helped build and protect one of the most dangerous lies in modern business history. Today, we unravel everything: the ambition, the manipulation, the secrets, the victims, the empire of deception. This is Theranos, the greatest scam in Silicon Valley. To understand the scam, you must first understand the promise, because every great deception starts with a story people want to believe. And Elizabeth Holmes had the perfect one. Born in 1984, the daughter of a family dreaming of reclaiming lost wealth, pressured by history and wrapped in the legacy of status, Elizabeth grew up believing two things. 1, she was destined for greatness. 2, failure was not an option. At 19, she stepped into Stanford University, not just as a student, but as a girl certain she would change the world. But here is where the darkness begins. Because instead of finishing her education, instead of learning the science, instead of building slowly like every legitimate founder, Elizabeth did something far more dangerous. She crafted a story about a device that could run hundreds of medical tests from a single drop of blood, a story that would save lives, disrupt healthcare, reinvent medicine, a story too good, too magical, too miraculous to actually be true. But Silicon Valley doesn't reward truth, it rewards confidence, vision, certainty. And Elizabeth Holmes, she had certainty in abundance. Even if the science was impossible, even if the technology didn't exist, and even if experts warned her it could not be done. Her response? I don't accept that. And with that refusal, with that unshakable belief in illusion, Theranos was born. Every scam needs a leader, someone charismatic, someone magnetic, someone who can make lies feel like destiny. Elizabeth became that leader. The black turtleneck, the deepened voice, the hypnotic stare that made investors feel they were witnessing the future in human form. She didn't resemble a scientist, she resembled a symbol, a female Steve Jobs, a visionary, a revolutionary, a billionaire in the making. But behind the scenes, her own employees whispered something very different. They whispered that Elizabeth didn't understand the science she preached, that she dismissed anyone who questioned her, that truth inside Theranos wasn't just ignored, it was forbidden. And this is where the scam transformed into something bigger. It wasn't just a lie anymore, it was a cult of personality. A world where obedience was required, skepticism was punished, fear was a management tool, loyalty meant silence, and transparency simply did not exist. Employees weren't allowed to speak to each other about their work. Teams were isolated, labs were hidden. Engineers didn't know what scientists were doing. Scientists didn't know what engineers were doing. Why? Because if the truth ever connected, the illusion would collapse. Elizabeth Holmes didn't just build a company, she built a kingdom of secrecy. And guarding that kingdom was the man who would become her partner in crime, Sunny Balwani. Older, richer, more aggressive, more controlling. Together, they created an environment of fear so deep, employees quit, cried, or cracked under pressure. Yet somehow, the outside world saw none of it, because Elizabeth Holmes had mastered the most dangerous talent in Silicon Valley. She could sell the fantasy. To understand how Theranos became a multi-billion-dollar deception, you must understand one thing. Elizabeth Holmes didn't fool the world alone. She had help, a lot of help. And that help came from some of the most powerful men in America. Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, James Mattis, Rupert Murdoch, the Walton family, the DeVos family. People with wealth, influence, connections, political power, and a tendency to trust someone who looked like the perfect story. But here's the darkest truth. They didn't invest because the technology worked. They invested because Elizabeth worked. Her charm, her conviction, her flawless, polished message. A world where no child fears needles. A world where blood testing is fast, painless, and cheap. A world where disease is detected early before it becomes deadly. It sounded noble. It sounded urgent. It sounded like the next great revolution. And Silicon Valley loves one thing above all: the idea of changing the world. Holmes didn't provide evidence. She didn't provide data. She didn't allow independent review. But she provided something far more intoxicating: hope. Hope sells. Hope blinds. Hope makes billionaires write checks without asking the hard questions. And behind closed doors, she sold them the illusion that they were part of a historic moment, that they were funding a miracle, that they were saving humanity. But in reality, their money wasn't building a breakthrough. It was feeding the most elaborate illusion Silicon Valley had ever seen. And every dollar invested, every handshake, every endorsement made her lie more powerful. The world believed Theranos had created a device called Edison, a small, sleek machine capable of running hundreds of tests from a single drop of blood. But here's the truth. Edison never worked, not even once. Not even for the simplest tests, not even under perfect conditions, not even after hundreds of redesigns, calibration attempts, and panicked late-night experiments. Inside the labs, scientists begged Elizabeth to slow down, to rethink, to acknowledge reality. But Elizabeth didn't want reality. She wanted results, and if science couldn't provide them, she would create the illusion of progress instead. Employees who raised concerns were fired, threatened, silenced, forced to sign aggressive NDAs. Others quietly tried to fix the impossible. The machine overheated, it leaked, it produced wildly inaccurate results. Sometimes it simply didn't turn on. And yet, Elizabeth demanded it be used for real patients, in real clinics, on real human lives. This is where the scam crossed into dangerous territory. Because a fake product doesn't just steal money, it harms people, it misdiagnoses them, it creates fear, panic, and false hope. A young woman was told she was miscarrying. She wasn't. A man was told he had prostate cancer. He didn't. Another patient was told she was HIV positive. She wasn't. But the suffering was real, the trauma was real, the tears were real. And the darkest part? Theranos employees knew. They watched as their machine delivered wrong result after wrong result. They watched the company blame nurses, doctors, clinics, anyone except the truth. And Elizabeth? She doubled down, every single time. Because stopping meant admitting the entire company was built on a fantasy. And for Elizabeth Holmes, the fantasy had become her reality. Theranos wasn't a company, it was a pressure cooker. A place where fear was used like oxygen. The man fueling that fear was Sunny Balwani, Elizabeth's secret partner, both in business and behind the scenes. He ruled with intimidation, shouting, threats, surveillance. Employees were monitored, emails reviewed, movements tracked, visitors questioned. Sunny wasn't running a startup, he was running a fortress to protect the biggest lie in Silicon Valley. Inside the labs, young scientists cried in bathrooms. Engineers walked on eggshells. Some employees quit. Others were fired without explanation. When big investors came to tour, employees were told, "Stay quiet. Don't look at them. Don't answer questions." And if someone dared tell the truth, security would escort them out within minutes. Then the legal threats would begin. People lived in fear of losing their jobs, fear of being sued, fear of being blacklisted for Silicon Valley forever. Elizabeth and Sunny used fear as a weapon, a shield, a way to keep the truth buried deep. But no matter how tightly you seal a secret, pressure always finds a crack. And for Theranos, that crack was coming. Soon. Very soon. Every empire built on lies eventually meets the same fate, a single truth slipping through the cracks. For Theranos, that truth came from the most unexpected place, inside the company itself. One young employee, quiet, observant, and troubled by what he was seeing, decided that silence was no longer an option. His name was Tyler Schultz, the grandson of George Schultz, one of the most powerful men on Theranos' board. Tyler didn't come to Theranos to expose corruption. He came believing he was helping build a medical revolution. He believed in Elizabeth. He believed in the mission. But inside the labs, he saw the ugly truth. Tests failing repeatedly, results being manipulated, data being hidden, scientists being silenced, and worst of all, patients receiving dangerously inaccurate reports. Tyler realized he wasn't helping save lives, he was witnessing harm. And when he raised the alarm internally, Theranos management didn't listen. They threatened, they dismissed, they warned him to stay silent. But Tyler Schultz refused to be part of the lie. He reached out to a journalist, and that journalist would change everything. His name was John Carey-Rue, an investigative reporter for the Wall Street Journal, known for exposing corruption others were too afraid to touch. When he received the first tip about Theranos, he sensed something was wrong. A company worth billions? A founder praised as the next Steve Jobs? A device promising miracles, but no published data? No peer-reviewed studies? No transparency? To an investigative journalist, that is the scent of deception. Carey-Rue began digging, quietly, carefully, knowing that Elizabeth Holmes had powerful allies and a reputation for crushing critics. He interviewed former employees, whistleblowers, medical experts, and lab scientists, and with each conversation, the truth became clearer. Theranos was a house of cards. But while Carey-Rue investigated, Theranos fought back, hard. Elizabeth Holmes hired lawyers, private investigators, threatened former employees, followed whistleblowers, tried to intimidate sources. One whistleblower was confronted in a parking lot, another was stalked. Tyler Schultz's own family home was surveilled. Elizabeth wasn't trying to protect innovation, she was trying to protect the illusion. But Carey-Rue refused to back down. He pushed, he verified, he checked every detail. And in October 2015, he published the article that shook the world. October 15, 2015, a date Silicon Valley will never forget. The Wall Street Journal headline hit with the force of an earthquake. Hot startup Theranos has struggled with its blood test technology. Inside the article, failed tests, fake demonstrations, manipulated data, secret lab operations, patient dangers, whistleblower accounts, fear, intimidation, and cover-ups. The world gasped. Investors panicked. Doctors demanded answers. Regulators mobilized. Elizabeth Holmes, however, denied everything. She went on television. She called the article false. She attacked the journalists. She claimed Theranos was being misunderstood. But science doesn't lie. Regulators arrived. Inspectors entered the lab. And within weeks, the truth was undeniable. The Edison device didn't work. The tests were dangerously inaccurate. Theranos had been using third-party machines for most tests. The company had deceived patients, doctors, investors, and partners. Walgreens immediately began shutting down their blood testing centers. The FDA stepped in. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services launched a full investigation. And for the first time, the illusion started to crumble. Once the truth reached regulators, the end came fast. The federal government banned Theranos from operating its labs. Elizabeth Holmes was banned from owning or running a medical company for 2 years. Sunny Balwani was barred as well. But Theranos didn't just lose credibility, it lost everything. Walgreens terminated their partnership. Safeway ended their multi-million-dollar contract.
Investors demanded answers. Lawsuits began piling up. Employees fled the sinking ship. The board fractured under pressure. Theranos tried to survive, tried to pivot, tried to rebuild. But the truth was too big to hide now. Too loud, too undeniable. By 2018, the company that was once valued at $9 billion was worth nothing. Theranos shut its doors. The offices were emptied. The machines were dismantled. The employees dismissed. The empire was gone. But the story, the scandal, the darkness was far from over. Because now it was time for the law to speak. For years, Elizabeth Holmes had walked through Silicon Valley as an untouchable force, a visionary, a billionaire, a prodigy. But now, the world finally saw her for what she truly was, a fraud. And in 2018, the US Department of Justice took the step many thought would never happen. Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani were indicted on multiple counts of fraud, including fraud against investors, fraud against doctors, fraud against patients, conspiracy to commit wire fraud. These weren't simple business mistakes, these were criminal deceptions, deliberate acts that put lives at risk. The charges carried the possibility of 20 years in prison. And yet, when Elizabeth walked into the courthouse for the first time, wearing her trademark black attire, staring straight ahead with a blank expression, she still believed she could talk her way out of it. Because that's what she had always done, with investors, with employees, with the media, with Silicon Valley. But this time, the people she needed to convince weren't tech billionaires or journalists. They were a jury. A jury that wanted evidence, not charisma, facts, not fantasy. And the truth was coming for her. In September 2021, after years of delays, pandemic complications, and legal battles, the trial of Elizabeth Holmes finally began. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, former employees, curious spectators, legal analysts, and victims who had once trusted her promises. But the person everyone watched most was Elizabeth Holmes. She entered the courtroom looking different, not the commanding Silicon Valley CEO, not the black turtleneck icon, not the deep-voiced visionary. She appeared softer, quieter, almost fragile. A new public persona, a strategy. Because her defense was preparing to argue something unexpected, something that shocked even those who had followed the case from the beginning. That Elizabeth Holmes wasn't responsible for her decisions, that she had been controlled, manipulated, abused by Sunny Balwani. This wasn't just a legal strategy, it was a dramatic rewrite of the entire Theranos story. And it set the stage for one of the most emotionally charged trials in Silicon Valley history. Elizabeth Holmes' lawyers revealed a defense that took the world by surprise. They claimed that Sunny Balwani, her former COO and secret romantic partner, exercised emotional and psychological control over her. That he dictated her decisions, that he managed her life, that he shaped her behavior, that he influenced her leadership at Theranos. Abuse allegations are serious, and many wondered if the claims were true, or if they were simply a desperate attempt to save her from prison. The prosecution argued that Elizabeth Holmes was not a victim, but the mastermind. They showed emails, texts, presentations to investors, demonstrations she personally staged, statements she made under oath, and undeniable evidence that she knowingly misled everyone around her. The jury listened, carefully, quietly, trying to separate truth from manipulation, responsibility from blame, reality from performance. This wasn't just a trial of evidence, it was a battle of narratives. The visionary versus the fraudster, the victim versus the mastermind, the storyteller versus the truth. And in the middle of the courtroom, Elizabeth Holmes sat still, her face unreadable, as the world tried to decide who she really was. The courtroom became a theater, a high-stakes drama filled with emotional testimony, scientific explanations, tears, and revelations. Former Theranos employees took the stand, some trembling, some angry, some still shaken by the emotional scars they carried. They told the jury about failed tests being hidden, data being altered, machines malfunctioning, pressure to lie, toxic leadership, fear of retaliation. One scientist broke down as she described leaving the company after her concerns were ignored. Another described sleepless nights knowing patients were being harmed. Doctors testified about inaccurate results that terrified their patients. Investors testified about lies they were told. Experts explained why the technology was scientifically impossible. And through it all, Elizabeth Holmes watched, sometimes taking notes, sometimes looking down, sometimes staring blankly into the distance, but never once acknowledging the pain behind the words. The prosecution argued that Theranos wasn't just a failure, it was a deliberate deception, built on lies, powered by intimidation, protected by secrecy. The defense argued Elizabeth was young, ambitious, misled, influenced by Sonny, trying her best, and
The jury filed into the courtroom slowly, their faces unreadable. The world held its breath. Elizabeth Holmes stood, her hands clasped tightly, her face expressionless. The same blank stare she had mastered for years. The courtroom fell silent. The foreperson rose. And one by one, the verdicts were read. Guilty, on multiple counts of fraud against investors. Guilty of deceiving those who believed in her vision. Guilty of orchestrating a scheme that shook the medical world. The jury found her responsible for the lies she told, the promises she broke, the lives she endangered. She was acquitted on some charges, specifically those related to defrauding patients. But the message was clear. Elizabeth Holmes was no misunderstood genius, no misunderstood innovator, no victim of circumstance. She was the architect of one of the biggest frauds in Silicon Valley history. As the verdict was read, Elizabeth didn't cry. She didn't protest. She didn't collapse. She simply stared forward, still, silent, frozen. The performance was over. The illusion shattered. The world finally saw her without the turtleneck, without the deep voice, without the smoke and mirrors. What remained was just a woman who had fooled nearly everyone. But the story did not end with the verdict. Now came the part she couldn't charm or manipulate. On November 18, 2022, Elizabeth Holmes walked into the courtroom again. This time, not as a billionaire founder, not as a Silicon Valley icon, but as a convicted felon. She arrived with her partner, holding hands. She arrived pregnant, and many argued it was another attempt to gain sympathy, a final attempt at reshaping the narrative. Inside the courtroom, victims spoke, former employees spoke, investors spoke, prosecutors spoke. Some described financial loss. Others described emotional trauma. Doctors described the panic their patients felt after receiving false results. One victim said, "You destroyed my trust in the medical system." Another said, "You played with people's lives." And then Elizabeth Holmes spoke, her voice trembling, her tone softer than ever. She apologized. She talked about dreams, mistakes, and regrets. She talked about being humbled. She talked about wanting to continue helping people. But many wondered, were these words sincere or just another performance? The judge had to decide. And then, in a calm but firm voice, he delivered the sentence: 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. A moment of finality, a moment that marked the fall of a woman who once stood at the peak of Silicon Valley. Elizabeth Holmes looked down. Her lips tightened. Her eyes glistened for a moment, not with tears of sorrow, but with the realization that her story was no longer in her control. Her freedom was gone. Her empire was gone. Her reputation was destroyed. The greatest scam in Silicon Valley had finally reached its price. While the world focused on Elizabeth Holmes, another figure stood in the shadows. The man at the heart of the machine, the enforcer, the one who created the culture of fear, Sunny Balvani. He faced his own trial, separate from Holmes, and without the defense of charm or reinvention. No deep voice, no turtleneck, no image to protect, just the raw evidence. Witness after witness testified against him, describing his threats, his intimidation, his pressure to falsify results, his refusal to stop unsafe testing. The prosecution portrayed him as the operational mastermind, a man who should have known better, a man who controlled the labs, a man who protected the lie. And the jury agreed. Sunny Balvani was found guilty on all 12 counts brought against him. Fraud, conspiracy, deception on a massive scale. He was sentenced to nearly 13 years in prison, longer than Elizabeth Holmes herself. Two people who once secretly lived together, now destined to serve long years apart. Two architects of a lie, left to face the truth behind bars. The empire they built together had become their prison. When people think about the Theranos scandal, they often focus on the money, the billions lost, the investors betrayed, the power brokers fooled. But the deeper tragedy lies elsewhere, in the ordinary people whose lives were rocked by a faulty test. A pregnant woman told she was miscarrying, a man told he had cancer, a patient given an HIV-positive result, a woman who believed she might be dying. Real fear, real tears, real trauma. Doctors had to reassure their patients only after retesting at real laboratories. Some patients lived for weeks believing they were sick. Some canceled life plans. Some spiraled into anxiety. Elizabeth Holmes claimed she wanted to change healthcare, but instead, she damaged the trust millions of people place in medical innovation. And trust once broken is not easily repaired. For these victims, the pain didn't end with a verdict. The fear they experienced became a permanent memory, a reminder that even the brightest promises can hide the darkest truth. What drives a person to lie to the world on such a massive scale? What makes someone risk the lives, money, and trust of thousands for a dream that doesn't exist? Psychologists analyzing Elizabeth Holmes point to a combination of ambition, narcissism, and perfectionism. A relentless desire to succeed at any cost. A fear of failure so intense, it becomes blinding. She didn't just want to make a company succeed. She wanted to be the company. She blurred the line between reality and illusion, between ambition and obsession. Some experts suggest that her extreme secrecy and control were forms of self-preservation. She created the myth of herself to survive in a ruthless environment, a world where investors celebrate promise more than truth. But the human cost of that myth was catastrophic. Employees, patients, and investors all paid for her need to be seen as infallible. Theranos didn't exist in a vacuum. It thrived because the culture around it allowed it to thrive. Silicon Valley celebrates boldness. It rewards risk-taking. It worships charisma. It is at its core a world that values stories over proof. Investors wanted the next miracle. They didn't ask enough questions. They wanted to be part of history. The media amplified the story. The public bought into the vision, and a lack of regulatory oversight allowed the illusion to continue longer than it should have. Theranos is not just the story of Elizabeth Holmes. It is a cautionary tale for an entire industry. A reminder that ambition, when unchecked, can be dangerous, and that blind faith in visionaries can enable deception on a massive scale. Theranos teaches us several critical lessons. 1. Charisma is not proof of competence. 2. Fear and secrecy are red flags. 3. Investors and media must demand transparency. 4. Innovation cannot come at the expense of ethics. 5.
even brilliant ideas can mask dangerous lies. It reminds entrepreneurs that ambition without honesty is a recipe for disaster. It reminds investors that excitement must be balanced with due diligence. And it reminds the world that the price of deception is always paid by innocent people. Today, Elizabeth Holmes awaits her sentence. Sunny Balvani serves his. Theranos is gone, but the story continues to echo. Medical innovation has slowed in some areas due to distrust. Venture capitalists now scrutinize bold claims more carefully. The term Theranos Effect has entered startup culture, a reminder that hype without evidence can be dangerous. And yet, some are still fascinated by Elizabeth Holmes, by the illusion she created, by the world she convinced to believe her story. Her rise and fall is more than a story about one woman. It's a mirror reflecting our desire to believe, our hope for miracles, and the danger of trusting too quickly. The greatest scam in Silicon Valley is not just the story of Theranos. It's the story of ambition unchecked, deception ignored, and the human capacity for both deception and belief. Because in the end, the real scandal isn't only the fraud, it's how easily the world wanted to believe. And that is a story that will never be forgotten. In Silicon Valley, the next revolutionary idea is always around the corner. The next visionary founder is always waiting to be discovered. But for every story of triumph, there is the shadow of deception. For every success, a cautionary tale.
Theranos reminds us, innovation without integrity is not progress. Dreams without truth are dangerous, and ambition without ethics can become the greatest scam the world has ever seen. If this story of ambition, deception, and the dark side of success shocked you, amazed you, or made you think twice about the power of belief, then don't let the conversation stop here. Smash that like button if you were surprised by how far the Theranos scam went. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications because we uncover the untold stories behind the biggest business scandals and dark secrets in every episode. Comment below, what lesson from Theranos hit you the hardest? Do you think Silicon Valley will ever learn? Your thoughts might be featured in our next video. And finally, share this story with your friends, your family, or anyone who needs a reminder. Not every story that glitters is gold, and not every visionary is what they seem. Join us as we explore the hidden truths behind success. And remember, the darker the secret, the more important the story. Your next journey into the untold is just a click away.